Hello, welcome back to Swig Talks Football. Welcome back for the prediction show. And today we are going to kick things off with Brighton and Everton. So it's Newcastle, Brighton, and Everton. So Brighton last time round they lost to Fulham 2-1 away at the cottage last weekend. And so this time around they host the Toffees. Now Everton themselves they faced Leeds last time round and drew with them one apiece, which was unfortunate for my fantasy football, but that's neither here nor there. And so they host, or they're, Brighton host Everton at the Amex for that. So I'm going to predict for that relatively decent enough game, I'd say, to watch, but I think I'm going to go for 2-2 draw in terms of who's going to win. So a 2-2 draw Desmond for that. Next up, Leeds hosting Arsenal. So Leeds, as we've seen this season currently, they have been very good in terms of going up against the big six, going up against the bigger teams. They haven't shied away from them. They haven't really given them too much respect. They've really done great in terms of making entertaining games out of it. If you think of the Liverpool game, think of the United games as of recent. Obviously, I think of the Spurs game as well. Probably one of the only few positive moments to come from Spurs this season. And they host Arsenal, who will be looking to kick back into full throttle from their surprising defeat last week out against Manchester United, where they lost 3-2. But having been gone through in the group stages now of the Champions League, Arsenal will look to keep that momentum going on for tomorrow's game as of this recording. And they're going to be going to Leeds. Now, I do predict it'll be a really good game. I think it'll be a bit end-to-end stuff, a bit chaotic, I think, in the box. Obviously, Arsenal being such good set-piece takers, Leeds not being really the best at defending set pieces, so it'll be interesting to see how they go on with that. But with that being said, I'm going to go for an Arsenal 3, Leeds 2 win on that for the Gunners, I think. Right? Yeah, I think. No, scratch that. Scratch that. I'm going to go 2-2. We're going to go 2-2, I think. I think Leeds have enough. They've shown enough at Elland Road, especially, in order to get a draw out of any game, especially with the big six. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw with them. So another Desmond. Next up, Wolves versus Bournemouth. So Bournemouth have done really well so far in the January transfer window. They've signed Ryan from Vasco da Gama for 35 million quid. Comes in I would say, as the straight replacement for Antoine Semenyo. And then, so it'll be interesting to see will he start and he'll adapt from the Brazilian league, transitioning then into the Premier League. Be interesting to see how he gets on with that. In terms of Wolves, then obviously in the most recent reports, we've seen that the striker Stranarsson has agreed terms to go to Palace for a reported 50 million total package, 45 plus 5 in add-ons. So it'll be interesting to see if I don't imagine Stranarsson to be in the squad. Um, and so it'll be interesting to see even if that deal gets over the line, because as of now, it's still within still upheaval. So it's not been confirmed whether or not it's fallen through, but it has been confirmed that he will sign on the dotted line either. So it'll be interesting to see how that. If you ask me, I think he's jumping ship as quickly as he can, because Palace then are sending Mateta over to Italy. So as of this recording, he's agreed terms with AC Milan. So it's kind of Mateta goes, Trent comes in. A lot of money for 50 million quid for a fellow who's only scored 2 goals in his last 21 appearances. But if he can replicate anything like how we did last season, then Palace would have had a really good striker, and Palace have done really good business. The likes of Brennan Johnson and Strand Larson coming in now, and then with the likes of Sarr and Jeremy Pete, coming back as well into the team. Palace have a really good forward line coming into the next part of this season coming. However, I do think that it's going to be a Bournemouth win, and I want to go with a 3-1 win on that. Evan Nielsen with a goal, Tavernier, and screw it, I want to say, and Ryan will come on and get a goal as well on his debut, I think. So next up we have a London derby, a dirty London derby, with Chelsea hosting West Ham. Now, West Ham look like they're a different team now under Nuno, don't they? They look really, really good and positive. Last week out they drew or they had a humongous win over Sunderland, following an impressive bout in their previous other games. Where earlier on in West Ham they haven't really gotten going, but the last couple of games now they've seemed to be really doing well. Against Spurs they were really, really good. They played exceptionally well. Against Sunderland, they played really, really well also. Now, the only thing with West Ham, they've now sold Paqueta, so he's gone back to Brazil, to Flamengo, so he's gone. So it'll be interesting to see, will they bring in anyone there, or will they just do with what they have? They've also sent the likes of Ward-Prowse out on loan to Burnley, so they're down in the creativity side of things in midfield. So it'll be interesting to see in the last couple of days. Maybe they'll bring in someone else, or maybe they won't, and they're happy enough with who they have. But I was really impressed with how they tackled Sunderland and how they got the goals early enough on, and they set the tone really, really well, especially in the first half. So they go up against Chelsea, who Chelsea, I must say, they made light work of Napoli, even though the scoreline was 3-2. I felt like Chelsea controlled the game ridiculously well in Naples a couple of days ago. That being said, I do think Chelsea have too much firepower going forward. Senior seems to have a really good connection with the players. You've seen that even in the interview with João Pedro after the Napoli game. He comes out and he's very praising of the players, very positive when he speaks. He doesn't seem to dig any of them out. And so I've been really impressed with how Rosenior has taken to life to Chelsea. And I can see that translate into on-field success against West Ham, whereas I can see it'll be an entertaining game, goals galore, 3-2 Chelsea is what I'm going to go for. Next up, we have Liverpool versus Newcastle. Now, the Isak uh, past versus present. Although for Isak, he ain't even on the present team. So it'll be interesting to see how they both go at it. Both teams obviously through the next round of Champions League. I was very impressed with Newcastle how they handled PSG last night or 2 nights ago. They were really, really they were unlucky to not come away from Paris with all 3 points. If you ask me, a couple of dodgy decisions from the referee. So it'll be interesting to see how it transpires this weekend as they go to Anfield. And as we know now, the likes of Kanate and Frimpong are going to be out for ages. Well, maybe not as much with Kanate, but Frimpong is definitely going to be out for a period of time. Kirkes is out already as well with another injury. So it'll be interesting to see how Liverpool how they cope with that. They've already lost the likes of Bradley and now Frimpong, so you know, don't be surprised if we see Szoboszlai going at right back again. The likes of Endo maybe coming in midfield with McAllister and Wirtz as well, holding all that three in the midfield, or Curtis Jones maybe slotting in instead, and Wirtz going maybe out on the left, which he seems to not have done as of late, but in terms of performances, he seems to have really, really done well in the last couple of games or so. That being said, I think Liverpool have too much just for the Toon Army, and so I'm going to go with them for a 2-1 win on that. Next up, Villa versus Brentford. Villa, if I can do my recollections, yes, they weren't too. Well, they beat Newcastle last week. Very impressive win against them. Ollie Watkins looked like a handful for the Newcastle defence, so he'll be looking to kick on for that and to get that up and running as well against the mighty Brentford's defence of Keith Andrews' side. Brentford, on the other hand, last week out, I predicted them to beat Forest 2-1, but ended up losing 2-0 to Forest, which was surprisingly in a way. So they'll be looking to kick on from that. Thiago will be looking to get more in the box, maybe to try and put the Villa defence on alert. However, I even think with Villa's signings that they've brought in, the likes of Douglas Luiz now who's signed, he's come back on loan from Juventus. You have Tammy Abraham who's also signed a permanent deal. He's also back. Be interesting to see maybe will Emery switch to maybe a 4-4-2 and go with Tammy and Ollie Watkins up top, or will he maybe stick to just having Watkins as the sole striker? Also, one player that I've been really impressed with in the last few weeks has been Buendia. Looked really, really well against Newcastle. Obviously, scored a worldie of a goal as well. So it'll be interesting to see how they all cope and how they all get on. That being said, I do, for some reason, I have a hunch it's going to be a really strong game in terms of an attacking context. I think Brentford have a really good threat going forward. I think the wingers will give the likes of Matty Cash and Digne of Villa. I think they'll struggle mainly with the pace of Sharjah and Utara. And then the likes of, Pau Torres going up against Igor Thiago would be a really, really impressive kind of feat. Even Lindelof as well, who, was out of favour with United, has come to Villa, seems to be, in and around the squad seems to be doing okay for them. But yeah, I think it's going to be overall, I think it'll be another draw. But I'm going to go 3-3 for that. For that. Next up, then we have Fulham and Man United. So Man United at home, Fulham away. United, Carrick can't seem to do anything wrong. He seems to be getting everything right. Only downside and negative with United now is the likes of Dorgu, who scored an absolute worldie last week, is out injured and out injured for I think was it 3 to 4 months with a hamstring injury. So he's a huge loss now, huge loss. But that being said, the way United handled Arsenal last week was just brilliant in terms from what I saw. I watched the whole game. I was really impressed with how they neutralized, Arsenal's attack. Saka didn't do anything in the game. Dorgu had him in his back pocket. You bring in on the likes of Cunha, who ran through the whole Arsenal midfield till the final phase and then scored a brilliant long range goal. I think he was really, really doing brilliantly well. And you could even see it in the players' reactions after the game. Carrick seems to be getting, it's very reminiscent of Ollie and how he was with the players on his first stint. There seems to be a good positive energy back with United. And I even read was in the last few days that Kobe Mano wants to extend his deal, extend his contract with United now because of probably the positive atmosphere Carrick has done and has created. So it would be really interesting to see how they get on now against Fulham, who last week out they beat Brighton 2-1. Yeah, again, a Harry Wilson wonder goal. He seems to be their star man of the season. I've no doubt they'll have a couple of big teams coming in maybe for him in the summer. Spurs in particular would not be opposed to seeing Harry Wilson in a Tottenham shirt at all. So yeah, they seem to be doing well. They've also signed Oscar Bob now from Man City. So you have the likes of Iwobi, Chukwueze, Kevin, Jimenez, Rodrigo Muniz, and Harry Wilson now, and Emile Smith Rowe obviously as well. Fulham have seemed to be really getting going with good young attacking players. I've seen as well that City also have a buyback clause for Oscar Bob, so it'll be interesting to see how he gets on there. He'll probably hit the ground running, knowing any City academy people who have left, they've gone on to do reasonably well. So yeah, that being said, United will have too much for Fulham, I think. I'm going to go with them 2-1, 2-1, 2-1 for that for the Red Devils. Next up, we have Palace and Nottingham Forest. Both sides need the win. Both sides desperately needed. Palace probably more so because they were on the defeated end against Chelsea last week out, where they lost 3-1. Yeah, they've also had, the likes of Mateta now is not going to be available for their game. You have the likes of, they've lost so many players. Gahey already gone as well. Their manager's going to be leaving at the end of the season. Palace seem to be going through a real transitional phase, and I don't see them bouncing back from it. Really, I don't see them getting anything but a draw from this game. I think Forest have too much going forward for them to handle. I think Forest are looking really, really good. Been very impressed with them as of late. I know last week out they won 2-0 against Brentford, so that was an impressive victory for Sean Dyche's team. But yeah, excuse me. Yeah, I think it'll be a relatively straightforward enough draw for both teams, so I'm going to go with them 1-1 on that. Next up, then we have the juicy, the tasty, the roast dinner delight on a Sunday afternoon of a game. If you're a Spurs fan, at least, because it's a guaranteed 3 points. It's just City. It's just City, lads. It's just City. It's like what Fergie used to say about Spurs. It's Tottenham, lads. For us, it's City. What have City really been doing the last week? By putting in a title challenge. They lost to Bodo. Bodo went. Not all teams can go to Bodo and get a result. I suppose, granted we drew with them, but then last year I think we beat them in Norway, if memory serves me right. Barely, barely beat them, but beat them nonetheless. Nevertheless, Spurs face City. Spurs look really, really well again in the Champions League against Frankfurt. I have to say they look really, really positive. Going to that 3-4-3 formation, if Frank does not stick to that for the City game, then we're in deep, deep, deep trouble. As I think that's the only formation with the current crop of players that we have that seems to get any bit of a tune out of them. You know, Slanky came on at the end of the game, or near enough to the end of the game, got a great goal. We've also sent Scarlett out on loan. He's now joined Hibs. You know, the Hibs would be my second team and my first team up in Scotland, as I had spent some time with them, working with them. So when I seen the news today that Scarlett signed, I was like, oh my God, that's brilliant, brilliant from Hibs, and for him and for Scarlett, because I think he needs consistent games. He needs to get out into first team, and he said it himself in his interview, that it's his first time going away from the club, and that he's wanted to, he's already wanted to get the loan move going for the last couple of weeks. So I'm really happy for him. So hopefully Scarlett does the business for Hibs and fires them into Europa League positions. But back to the game at hand, Spurs v City. Spurs seem to have had City's number the last couple of years, but I don't see that. I see that continuing, but that's more out of wishful thinking as opposed to me being realistic. Realistically, I can see Spurs losing this game 2-3-0, but I'm not going to go with that. I am going to go Spurs are going to win this game 2-1. 2-1. And Romero is going to pocket Haaland. Yeah, right, he fucking is. Um, but yeah, I think City have looked really, really well, but Tottenham always have City's number. So yeah, I'm going into this game with absolute blissful optimism, even though knowing full well Spurs probably won't win. But I'm going in thinking that they will, because if we think it, it'll happen. And then final game of the week, we are going to go with Sunderland against Burnley. Now Sunderland will be looking to kick back into gear after their defeat against, who was it, against West Ham last week out. They host Burnley, who Burnley were very, very unlucky to draw the game against us, against Spurs last week out. I felt like they deserved to win, to be perfectly honest. So they'll be looking to try and get a result maybe here now against a fellow promotion sider in Sunderland. That being said, and it seems to be the tail of the tape with Burnley, but I feel their firepower just does not. It's just not there. It's just not there. And so I'm going to go for a Sunderland win 2-1. 2-1 to Sunderland. And yeah, that's it really. So let me know what you think. Let me know how you your fixtures, or your not fixtures, your comments on my predictions, your predictions down below in the comment section below. If you like the video, hit the thumbs up button, press subscribe for all that jazz, and we shall see you hopefully on the next one. And let's hope, fingers crossed, Spurs pull off a miracle and actually win a game in the Premier League. If fewer things have happened, or lesser things have happened, what's that saying? What's that saying? If pigs fly, yeah, if pigs fly. Anyways, let's see if the Spurs can fly and beat Man City. Anyways, thanks very much for watching, and I will see you later.